know, you're a typical press guy. You're grabbing me in front of all this. And I trust you as far as I throw your phone. I have a good arm, man.
I'm sure you can.
I can throw it a long way. But my point is this.
Yes.
I have made very clear to the Israelis what they have to do in the near term. If they don't, what's going to happen?
So what's going to happen? Is the U.S. going to cut off funding?
I came because usually you tell me I have a nice suit and you didn't comment on my suit today, so I don't feel a little offended.
No.
Thank you. Can you sit back in, sir, please? Thank you.
Here, okay, we can cut off from there, I think. That was, again, from Jonathan M. Katz. Someone else tries to get the president's attention, and his staff quickly moves him along after he threatened to take a journalist. Again, like you said, a TikTok influencer kind of guy, but also just a guy who's been a known journalist for a number of years now. Not like a kid. This is someone in their mid-40s who just essentially asked him a question about Israel and sends President Biden into sort of a tailspin where he threatens to take the guy's phone and throw it across the room because he's got a good arm. And then says, well, are you saying Israel's essentially going to have consequences about this? What's the actual quote? I won't get the exact quote. He goes, at this point, this is from President Biden, I've made it very clear to the Israelis what they have to do in the near term. If they don't, what's going to happen? And the reporter, Jonathan M. Katz, said, well, what's going to happen? And he said, a lot. And then the U.S., he says the U.S. Going to cut off funding, and then he gets kind of moved along very quickly. Right. But he already says a lot in a very threatening way. Again, this is right after he threatens to take the guy's phone and throw it across the room because of his amazing arm.
You've got these traditional liberal journalists who were kind of on the periphery of this influencers event. And they go right up to President Biden while he's making the moves. They've all got their camera phones out, and they ask about defunding Israel. And this is now what leftist journalists want to know. I mean, I think, again, that shows a change even in the United States. Not that they always loved Benjamin Netanyahu, not that they would always be the strongest supporters of Israel, but they weren't in support of what Hamas did. They weren't going to try and justify what Hamas did on October 7th. They weren't going to try and justify Hezbollah starting a new conflict or other Islamic terror groups' actions. But now we've made this weird move, Logan, where they do. I mean, and it's like, again, it's a backdoor way of doing it, but they say, well, basically the way they've been treated for so long, it's no wonder they act this way. And so that's what President Biden is now having to deal with inside his own party.
Right. You have an extreme left and maybe a right wing that would be pro-Israel and extreme left that now is against Israel, including Jonathan M. Katz. So I said, this person who went up to him, Biden threatens to take his phone and throw it away for asking him, or throw it across the room for asking him a question about Israel. Again, this is not someone who is a conservative or probably friendly to most of our causes. He's the one who went after Katie Britt after her response to the State of the Union. This is a guy who's very well known, and he was asking about what are you going to do to stop genocide. This was, again, not necessarily on the side of pro-Israel at that point. But what happens is, as it does seem to happen with President Biden, and then we saw it again in that speech. I know we're going to play a clip from that as well. Things seem to backfire, even when put under a situation where you think, okay, this is going to be a bunch of friendly people. They're going to come up to us. It's going to be fine. No, someone comes up, an established journalist with his phone ready to go, recording. That happens. And then, of course, you have this now infamous moment at the Jimmy Kimmel, Joe Biden, Barack Obama fundraiser that happened over the last couple of days with what they've said, as President Biden essentially stalled out on stage and had to be walked off the stage by President Obama. Again, President Obama, he's obviously not, he was one of our younger presidents, so he's not an old man now at this point either, but he's certainly not a young guy either, and he has to keep an eye out. He's in his 60s, keep his eye out and move, as you're seeing on the screen right now if you're watching, pretty much grab President Biden by the arm and walk him off stage in a very uncomfortable, great-grandfatherly kind of way. I mean, again, there is a point where you start feeling bad that they're doing this to him, too, because clearly he shouldn't be in this situation.
Even by releasing that video, Logan, remember that was a fundraising event with Jimmy Kimmel, right? I mean, that was, 45-minute discussion. It wasn't like some big, long thing. But the fact that they keep releasing all of these videos, even in settings that aren't as public, usually we see these at speeches he's given, and the news is all there. Not like it's something they could potentially not have press at. But I feel like it's being done to him on purpose because there's so many liberals who think he is the wrong candidate to go up against Donald Trump or anybody in any race, that he's just too old now, and that he has these moments where maybe he does sound tough, like I'll throw your phone across the floor, but then he has moments where he's looking out at the crowd and he totally kind of seizes up. I mean, he freezes. And as you said, Barack Obama isn't just like patting him on the back, like, hey, you were my old vice president, it's great to see you. I mean, he is holding him up like you would a very elderly family member. And it was in a loving way, in a sense. I mean, you can tell that they were very close, but not in a way that you would hope to have to hold up a guy running for another term.
But what was happening outside of the event? A protest of pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian protesters that were protesting the sitting president of the United States and his policy towards Israel, which is really hard to define right now because it is at equal parts. He's bowing to the protesters, and we're not seeing as much of it because college is out for the summer, so they're not camped out every day at universities across the country, but it's still happening. When he goes to have what should have been a win for him with a $30 million fundraising with a lot of name power, a lot of earned media around that, what the two takeaways for me are: hundreds of people on the left protested you, and the former president had to lead you off stage because you couldn't figure out quite what was going on. So the campaign has to be reeling right now, trying to figure out what's going on. And they're even giving statements to the press that, Eric Schultz, Obama's senior advisor, said that this did not happen in reaction to the New York Post story about him freezing up. And the campaign even took a shot at Rupert Murdoch and said, Rupert Murdoch's sad little super PAC, the New York Post, is back to disrespecting its readers and itself by once again pretending the president taking in an applauding crowd for a few seconds is somehow wrong. They're gaslighting you. If you watch the video, he's not just taking in the crowd. President Obama grabs him by the wrist to lead him away.
Yeah, to walk him off stage.
It looks like he doesn't know where he is. I mean, this is the problem. You can take in the crowd's applause. You know what you'd be doing if you were doing that? Waving at people, winking at some people, maybe even crouching down to talk to some people or shake some hands. He's not doing any of that, Logan. I mean, he eventually just stalls out.
And they're releasing these videos. Also, they're putting him in situations that are no-win situations. Why that was even an on-stage event like that, where there was even that moment of we're going to have to walk a significant amount of way. Like they're either not thinking it through.
These low chairs.
Yeah, they're either not thinking it through or they're doing it intentionally, like you said, to try to give that moment of, well, if something goes wrong, we can say, here's why we're being the good people by doing this.
He's having to be led away by a former president from almost 8 years ago.